Hi, my name is Mandy Mayer, and this is my presentation. A little bit about myself. I grew up in Western Kansas. I graduated from Fort Hays State University with my teacher ed degree. I have been married for 12 years to my wonderful husband. We have 3 amazing children who are currently enjoying summer, and I have taught kindergarten for 15 years. This last year was my first year as lead teacher at Sacred Heart Catholic School. This is a new role for me, that I had been in the classroom, and not being in the classroom full time has definitely been different, but I've enjoyed the challenges and that this year brought a few more challenges than normal, but I enjoyed taking over and helping out with those. In this assignment, we're going to be talking about the 3 levels of government control of public education. Local. State governments commonly delegate responsibility for the accountability and operation of the schools to the local bodies, who decide exactly how the schools will operate. In order to accomplish this, state departments of education create school districts. Some are done by geographic lines or counties. Others are just made up. Each school district is governed by a school board whose members are either elected by the public or appointed. Together, the federal and the state governments typically provide slightly more than half of government school funding, but school boards are responsible for funding the rest of their budgets. They do this by collecting property taxes on all the homes and businesses within their district, or by allowing the city council to do so on their behalf. As a result, the funding available to any given school district reflects a complex set of variables, including the local tax rates, exemptions, and the overall affluence of the community. Education is primarily seen as the state's and local responsibility in the United States. They establish the schools and colleges, develop curriculum, and determine requirements for enrollment and graduation. The structure of education finance in America reflects this, as the state has predominantly quite a bit of the funding for each school. 92% of education, especially at the elementary and secondary level, typically come from non-federal sources. So that's done by the state and local, at the state and local level. There is no explicit constitutional role for the federal government in pre-K through 12 education, but there is a common set of principles that has emerged that have been given wide agreement. These are based on historical landmark judicial decisions and the laws that have shaped the development of the federal role. It's a continually changing, but it's widely rooted in history and the understanding of what the federal government should be doing. There are 4 principles that appropriate the role for the federal government in K-12 education. The first is that the federal government should ensure that no student is denied the right to equal educational opportunity based solely on race, ethnicity, gender, disability, or other protected status. The second is that the federal government should provide funding to facilitate access to educational opportunities for high-need students, including but not limited to students living in poverty and students with disabilities. The third is that the federal government should support education research and development and the gathering and dissemination of information about the scope and quality of the nation's education system to inform policy and practice at the state and local levels. And the last one is that the federal government should, in a manner consistent with both its unique advantages and limited capacity, support the development of conditions to promote continuous improvement of the state and local education systems. So who's in charge? Most of the day-to-day operations takes place at the state and the local level. However, Congress does pass a federal budget each year, and it sets aside enough money to fund about 10% of the government-run schools' operating costs. However, this funding almost always comes with rules and regulations. In order to receive the funding, schools must comply with various requirements from all three branches of the government because federal education funding comes from taxation. Congress has the ability to write, statute, and distribute funds. If, for example, it releases funds as formula grants, which are distributed to all states on the same basis, it can ensure universal adoption of programs like Title I. The executive branch can regulate, clarify, and be selective about its enforcement of the laws, and the judicial rulings can redefine what qualifies as implementation of policy. Most of the people in the federal government are in the three branches of government are elected. Some in the Department of Ed would be appointed. State governments exercise primary accountability and oversight for the government-run schools. Most states' constitutions include basic provisions for education, giving state governments the authority to establish their own departments of education and to pass laws governing school practices. State governments often choose to delegate much of their authority to the local school districts, but they can reclaim that authority. At the local level, it's usually each district is governed by a school board whose members are either elected by the public or appointed, usually by the city council or the mayor. Each school board then appoints a superintendent, typically an experienced school administrator that acts as the CEO of all the schools in their district. Local school boards are also responsible for establishing curriculum, hiring personnel, and deciding when schools should be closed, consolidated, or constructed. School board members are typically elected or appointed. Most of them do not get paid, but the superintendent, who is then chosen by the school board, would be a paid position. So who has the most influence? At the local level has the influence to evaluate, develop, and implement management, communication, technology, school-level governance, and operation systems that support each student's learning needs and promote the mission and vision of the school. The state then has the most influence when evaluating, developing, and advocating for a data-informed and equitable resourcing plan that supports school improvement and student development. And then the federal government reflectively evaluates, communicates about, and implements laws, rights, policies, and regulations to promote student and adult success and well-being. So, support and educational success. The economic returns to education continues to grow with our global information economy. Basic skills are no longer enough in many jobs, and for this reason, the labor market returns to bachelor's and master's degrees, and that's those jobs that require those have grown even larger. Since education is so important to individual success, it is also a tool for addressing what is widely seen as one of the nation's most pressing problems: wealth and income inequality. The benefits of education go beyond the economic as well. Research strongly suggests that more educated adults live healthier, longer lives and are less likely to divorce, have children out of wedlock, and commit crimes. So it's not just about the economic growth and the quality of life and social well-being. It divides society, those that have education and those don't. So education is super important. It continues to play a major role in promoting individual opportunity, social mobility, national prosperity, and progress in areas such as health and democratic citizenship. Other policies and institutions also affect these outcomes: trade, labor unions, just to name a few. But the national interest in having a well-educated population is as strong as ever. Because of that, it is super important that each level of government work together to ensure that we are creating the best possible opportunity for success for all of our students. This assignment correlates to the standard because it provides resources that deepen our understanding of the levels of government involved in the school systems. It allows us to learn about the history of education and how involvement at each level has evolved with a changing worldview of education. This assignment is relevant because it helps us see the importance of all levels of government funding and involvement in education. The roles at each level have evolved as the worldview and needs of education have changed, and it is important to understand the levels of government and to find ways that they can work together to ensure the best possible avenues for student success. This assignment helped me see the importance of all levels of government. Learning the history and how it has evolved has deepened my understanding as well. I might not always agree with the funding and the way the federal and state and local governments assess and determine who receives the funding and the hoops that you have to jump through to get some of that funding, but I do believe that it's necessary funding from all levels to ensure that we can create the best possible learning environment for all students at any school. These are my references. Thank you and have a wonderful day.